أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا يحيى خذ الكتاب بالقوة وآتيناه الحكم صبيا صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. We first of all send our condolences to the Imam of our time, to the Marajeh, the Fuqaha, all of you and your respected families on the Shahadat of Imam Al-Jawad alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst the generous ones, amongst those who are Jawad in our life, in our ilm, with our family, with our loved ones, with those around us, inshallah. I always say that these types of events nearing the end of Dhal Qa'adah, for example, where we commemorate the Shahadat of this Imam, is crucial because we get to know this Imam a little bit better, and the reality is that there are some Imams that we simply don't know enough about, or maybe I'm generalizing, but ones that played a crucial role in the development of the deen, in the progression of the deen, in the propagation of the deen, and one that we should spend more time understanding. This Imam that we are here tonight to commemorate, born on the 10th of Rajab 195 AH in Medina, and he was martyred, poisoned by the Abbasid Khalifa on the 29th of Dhal Qa'adah 220 AH at the tender age of 25. He was poisoned, buried of course in Qadimiyah right now. And of those 25 years, 17 of them he was an Imam. He begins an era of young Imams. The 9th, the 10th, and the 12th Imams were young, single-digit ages. For example, this Imam was made an Imam at the age of 8, some say 9. His son, Imam Hadi, was made an Imam at the age of 6. Of course, Imam Zamana was made an Imam at the age of 5. And while these things are hard to believe for some of the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt, and maybe for some of us, how can an Imam how can someone who's 9 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old be an Imam? The reality is that up and down the Quran, we refer to many young prophets that are easily accepted by the Islamic world, but for some reason the Imams are hard to digest at such a young age. For example, the verse that I read for you in the khutbah from Surah Maryam, verse number 12, where Allah now addresses Prophet Yahya, and he says, take the book that we have given you and take the quwwah and take the power that we have given you, right? خُذَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْقُوَّةِ. Take that book with power, meaning with confidence. And understand, وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحُكْمَ صَبِيًّا. We've given you this wisdom at a very young age, right? The other example we have, of course, is Nabi Isa. Nabi Isa is the one who, even younger than 9 or 6 or 5, from the cradle he spoke to defend his mother. When Maryam now presents this son to the masses and they're confused that, wait a second now, what's happened? And all of this blasphemous talk about her and her character is coming about. Allah now instructs and orders this newborn baby from the cradle now to begin to speak, to defend his mother and to present the fact that I'm not an ordinary child. And the Quran, of course, very famously now, depicts this moment. where it says, قال إني عبد الله, I am the servant of Allah. وأتاني الكتاب وجعلنا نبيا, where I've been given the book and I've been made a Nabi. Right? So all these things are, easily accepted by the Islamic world. But for some reason, when it comes to Imam Jawad, Imam Hadi, Imam Zamana, things, of course, are under question. So the first point I want to make is that this is an era of very, very young Imams. Now, there's a statement that I want to share with you, a hadith, in fact, by the father of this Imam, Imam Rada alayhi salatu wasalam, that talks about the fact, it's a very beautiful statement and one that needs to be understood. He says that there is no greater honor for the Shi'as of Ali Muhammad than the birth of Al-Jawad. Okay? It's a very, very powerful statement, one that needs to be understood completely, because the reality is that up until the 9th Imam, there's been 9 Imams before him that have existed, and there have been moments of honor and moments of dignity and moments of elevation for all of them. But for Imam Rada alayhi salatu wasalam, for Imam Rada alayhi salatu wasalam to say that, first of all, it's not exaggeration. This is not him being, it's not sighe mubaligha, as they say. It's not exaggeration, right? What does he mean by this? And let's understand, right, this idea. Up until the birth of Imam Jawad, and up until the fact that he was made an Imam at the age of 8 or 9, some say, all the other Imams were made an Imam at relatively a younger stage in their life. Imam Ali, for example, was in his early 30s on the day of Ghadir. Imam Mujtaba equally was not so much a young, but an older man. Not old in the sense of 40s or 50s, but he was old enough to say, okay, this is a mature young adult, right? Imam Sajjad on the day of Ashura, some say, were in his mid to late 20s, etc., etc. And it's such that when they were able to present their respective knowledge and their ilm and their spirituality, the Imams, of course, to the enemies could simply say, look, these were people who had access to things that we didn't have access to. Now think about it for a moment. The argument against Imam Ali's knowledge was the fact that he was surrounded by the Holy Prophet. Day in and day out, he spent the entire day, his whole life, with and around the Holy Prophet. So if, some would say, if I had access to the Prophet the way that Ali had access to the Prophet, I would also have the same knowledge that he would have. Okay, or he spent, let's say, for example, 33 years of learning and studying and researching. That's why he has the knowledge that he's had. And they say that for all of the 8 Imams. But until you get to Imam Jawad. Now, Imam Jawad at the age of 9 displayed moments of knowledge that, that bewildered the people around him, the scholars around him, the philosophers around him, the learned individuals around him were dumbfounded by Imam Jawad's knowledge. And it brings me to a little bit of a point of aqidah. When we study the philosophy of imamat, and we study the situation of discussion around the successorship of the Holy Prophet, one such discussion is the qualities of the imam. What does an imam have to have in order for him to be an imam? The first one, of course, is ismat, infallibility. These require, of course, discussions. And I don't have time to go down the route of infallibility. It's not my topic. One of them that we have in our books is what's called the ilm ladunni. Ilm ladunni. An imam has to have ilm ladunni to be considered to be an imam. A very simple transition of ilm ladunni is the knowledge of the heavens and the earth. Okay, what is seen, what is unseen. Now, to give you some example of what ilm ladunni is, the second Khalifa approaches Imam Ali one day and says, Ali, everyone who asks you a question, doesn't matter what the question is, you have the answer right away. How is that possible? How do you have the answer readily available for all and any question that comes your way? So right away, Imam Ali now is asking the second Khalifa, how many fingers do you have on one hand? Excuse me, how many fingers do you have On one hand, he says 5 without hesitation. He says 5. He goes, how do you know that? He goes, I just something that I know. He says the same way that you know that you have 5 fingers in one hand is the same way I have the knowledge of the heavens and the earth. That's called ilm ladunni. Another example of ilm ladunni is that if I was to come to you and convince you that you don't exist, follow the example, okay? That you don't exist. You're like, look, Syed Assad, with all due respect, I exist. I said, no, you know what, brother, you don't exist. And I spend half an hour, 40, 45 minutes dropping knowledge on you, saying, you know what, this is the reason why you don't exist. You say, look, I know that you went to the Hawza, blah, 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 whatever the case may be, but nothing you can say or present to me will convince me that I don't exist. My own existence is the biggest proof I have for my own existence. All right? So that level of certainty when it comes to the knowledge of your own existence that can't be touched, can't be altered, can't be changed, is the same amount of knowledge that they have of the heavens and the earth. That's called the ilm ladunni. And the Imam must have it. Now, up until Imam Jawad, one can argue that, look, this knowledge has come from the books, has come from the Prophet, has come from the... But when you sit down Imam Jawad and attempt to debate him at the age of 7, 8, for example, to try to destroy the credibility of this Imam. Now all of a sudden, it's like, wait, this kid is special. This young man is special. This is not a simple Imam. And so the amount of debates that the Khalifa of his time attempted now to have, just to bring down, like I said, the credibility and the distinction of Imam Jawad and his family, meaning the Ahlul Bayt. And time again, this 8-year-old, 7-year-old, 9-year-old would destroy the person in front of him in terms of, knowledge. Proves the fact that, once again, that ilm al-ladunni and the adamat and the greatness of the Imams was once again restored from Imam Jawad all the way down to Imam Zaman. And maybe that's why Imam Rada said that the birth of Al-Jawad is one of the greatest moments of honor for the Shias of Ali Muhammad. And it brings me to a point that I want to talk a little bit about knowledge today. And it's a crucial point that I want to make. And I won't be too long, I promise. I know that all of you right now are in your respective homes, and we pray that Allah, removes this virus from us, that we do our part, of course, to socially distance and wear a mask, and we'll do what we can, inshallah, to get this virus under control. So once again, we can be in our centers and see each other and meet each other. As much as, the convenience of being at home is there, and I know that a lot of you, some of you at least has given me feedback that, we've kind of enjoyed this family time. The month of Ramadan was great, etc., etc. I think that this communal social aspect, of course, is also extremely important. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that tawfiq, to remove this virus, not only of the coronavirus, but any virus of the soul as well. Khair. I want to speak a little bit about knowledge tonight, inshallah, and then move towards Masa'ib. We live in a very challenging era. One of the biggest challenges that this era presents is actually a point that this era believes is a point of distinction for it. We refer to this era as the era of information, era of awareness, apparently. And with that information, sometimes it becomes a little bit counterproductive. What I mean by that is that knowledge can be a veil sometimes. Al-ilm al-hijab al-akbar. Ilm sometimes is the greatest of veils, as the saying goes. People get caught up in just the debate of things, not in actually the action of things. And on top of that, we end up kind of living in our own fantasy world when it comes to knowledge, right? So many times I've said this, that we live in a world of deen khayal and deen kitab. A khayali deen, a kitabi deen. What is meant by deen khayal? Khayal in Farsi and in Urdu, I think in Arabic as well, means your thought pattern, what you think. Mera khayal hai, for example, we say in Urdu, that I think this is how it should be. And sometimes this thinking that we have comes from nothing but in our mind, where we bounce ideas off the walls of our mind, and we think, okay, you know what, if it's in there long enough, it sounds kind of accurate. So we end up actually doing that when it comes to the deen, right? We end up thinking that the deen needs to be changed or altered in 2020, for example. I've even had people tell me that if the deen was to come down in terms of the sharia and fiqh and the rulings and the jurisprudence of the deen today in 2020, half of what we see right now in our books wouldn't be there. From marajiyat to khums to hijab, all that is outdated, doesn't fit in 2020, blah, blah, blah. All these talks I'm sure you've heard, I know I have for sure. And then they follow those comments by saying, in my opinion, I think, if you ask me, ... in my opinion, ... I think, ... And all of a sudden now, they have this right, they think, to go ahead and implement their bouncing ideas in their brain onto the deen themselves. And the thing is, if they believe it to be enough, they actually start to actually act on those things. Right? So I don't think that khums today is viable. I don't think khums is a good idea. Obviously the ulama are benefiting. You've seen these guys are traveling the world with cash in their pocket, blah, 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 and all these disgusting things that are said sometimes about our scholars. And that's all my khums money, so I'm going to not make, I'm not going to give khums. I've actually had one individual come to me very, very boldly in my face, say, I have made khums haram on myself. I don't give khums anymore. And you don't until that do you laugh, do you cry, do you sit down with this person? And I engaged him. I said, brother, why are you saying this? I mean, khums is wajib, right, with conditions. He says, no, it's not being spent properly. I know it's being abused. It's an abusive system, and I refuse now to take part in this mafia money laundering system. That's his thought. But now what he's done is that he's made something wajib on himself, haram, all based on nothing from the marja, nothing from the fatwa, nothing from the hadith, all from his deen khayal. Right? Deen khayal. There are people who actually come to me in the month of Ramadan in the summertime and say, this is not the way that the fast should be. The fast shouldn't be 17, 18 hours. This is inhumane to ask someone to go refrain from food and water for this long. So I don't fast in the summertime. I resume fasting in the wintertime. And I'm okay with that. I can justify that in the eyes of Allah. Again, deen khayal. And that comes from, over access or an abundant amount of information that can't be filtered. Everything that comes into your mind, it empowers the wrong portion of you. You actually start to believe that you can go ahead and impose your own opinion in an area that you don't have any expertise at all. And the funny thing is, every other field of education and science, we don't do that. We don't sit there and impose on the heart surgeon, no, I don't think that you should perform open heart surgery. I don't sit there and say, I don't think the root canal is a good idea. I don't even tell my mechanic, don't touch the brakes. Instead, no. But for some reason, the deen is so cheap. The deen is so fragile in our eyes that it needs someone like me who's maybe read one paragraph of one book to come in and save the day, and then they believe, oh, I've done a great service to the deen. No, you haven't. You've done a disservice to yourself and to your akhirat. And that's why, we look at three categories of those who have knowledge. And please follow me very carefully. And the example I'll give you, very mundane, very simple, like I do. I've had the honor of coming down to Edmonton and all of you and the great community there, and I miss all of you greatly. And so all of you understand that you've heard my simple lectures there in person last Muharram, talking about different things. I think he was talking about stress and anxiety last year. But anyways, this example is there are some people who approach knowledge very much like an ant. What does an ant do? An ant stores, an ant hoards, an ant kind of puts things away, collects things for later on, right? So many times when it comes to knowledge, there are people who, mashallah, are amazing at storing the knowledge, at hoarding the knowledge, right? They put it in boxes that say, for example, right, Muharram 2018, Ramadan 2015, Ayam Fatimiyya 2014, and everything that they have learned is all in there somewhere. It's all in the box in their brain, but it doesn't convert into action. They're just there to kind of store, and that's it, right? It's like a person who hoards and hoards and hoards. Their garage is packed, their basement is packed, but nothing in there is of any use to them. They just don't want to let it go. Then there are those people that are like silkworms. Silkworms are those people, that animal that kind of weaves its own silk, right? And literally creates its own cocoon around itself and suffocates itself. There are some people like that when it comes to knowledge. Okay, they end up, having these, like I said, these khayali thoughts, and they end up, literally weaving and wooving this cocoon around them, and they live in their own prison of their own thoughts, and they actually live in that thought, in that prison, and then that same prison will be the bane, will be their downfall. Then there are those that are bees. Beautiful example, right? Ants, silkworms, bees. Bees are what? Bees take the nectar from one area and make honey out of it. Something sweet, something beneficial, something nutritious, right? Something that will help themselves and help others as well, right? And we should always aspire to be the bee when it comes to knowledge, taking it from the right sources and converting honey out of it. Right? Be it knowledge when it comes to actual books and when it comes to actual like discussions online and lectures, or that honey that comes from sometimes some hardships and struggles, like a pandemic, like being in quarantine, like being in isolation. It's been months and months and months that we are at home, and some of us are embracing it. Others, we crave that social element of our life. Right? I remember, I think it was 2 weeks ago, there's a brother whose father passed away in Toronto, and he asked me to recite a majlis for him, and he said, look, Syed, we're going to set up something in the backyard. He had mashallah a very large backyard. Everybody's sitting 6 feet apart. You'll have a mic. Everybody, it'll be outdoors, so there's no mask that's needed, and you don't need to greet anybody. You come from the car, you go straight to the chair, you recite on the mic, and you go from there. I said, okay. I said, sure. And it was a very, very good system. According to the law, everything was followed, 6 feet apart, so outdoors. A mic was set up, a massive backyard, maybe max 20, 25 people there, a family. And I think for the first time since mid-March, I spoke in front of an actual live audience, right? Like right now, talking to a camera, a live audience. And I just realized how much I missed seeing my people, seeing our people, seeing our community. So this is hard. It's not easy on everybody, right? That's why you see mental health discussions increasing. That's why, God forbid, you see abuse numbers going up, right? But even in these hardships, there's an opportunity for us to extract the honey from these hardships. One thing I always say, and it is, I've carved it inside of my soul, is we do our level best. I do my level best to take the hardships of this dunya and give worship back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I've in the beginning of this seclusion, I had many webinars, online programs with many communities. I talked about the beauty of seclusion, the importance of being alone, the importance of isolation. But all great prophets, all great men, all great women, always took a break from the masses, found a quiet corner, quieted their soul down, did some meditation, did some dhikr, did some praying, found solace, found comfort in that. And we equally have to do the exact same thing, such that when this pandemic is over and we get back to a new normal, whatever that new normal is, everything else might be the same. Like right now, we're in phase 2 in Ontario here in terms of opening. So yeah, people, I could see the traffic is now increasing. The gas prices are going back up, for example, right? The stores now are getting more and more full. And so there's going to come a time when things will go back to normal. And the beauty is not in the normalcy of the society. The beauty is that we shouldn't be normal after this, right? This hardship, this difficulty has to be such that we convert this hardship, quote unquote, to worship towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the process now, we end up becoming a better person, right? This is a person, what, is like the bee, right? Gaining knowledge from experiences, maybe not from a book, but from experiences, and creating honey out of it. Okay? So I ask my youth, especially out there, that have access to an abundant amount of information. It's unreal. There are still some people who are relying on Wikipedia, for example, and other sources for their knowledge. Even like, diagnosing yourself using WebMD, for example, is not the best way to do it. You're bound to sit there and wrongly diagnose yourself. Same idea. The deen also is not that sasta and cheap that you go and you just, pretend that, okay, you know what, I Googled it and this is the answer, so this is what I'm going to go on. No. Sometimes, and this is the problem. The problem is that the deen khayal and the deen kitab, the stuff you see in the books, for example, that distance between the two is getting further and further away. we've kind of created a pseudo version of the deen inside of my mind, and I'm just kind of going based on that, right? So what's the big deal if I wear my sleeve up until here when it comes to hijab? No one looks at my forearm, so it's okay. It's a hot day outside. I'm wearing everything else. I'm wearing socks. I'm wearing my hijab. Every strand of hair is covered, but it's okay if I have a 3/4 sleeve on. What's the big deal, right? I don't see God. I don't see God having a problem with that, right? Deen khayal, for example. Right? And then that fasila, that distance between the actual what's written in our books and what's in our head gets further and further apart to the point where, God forbid, the Imam comes and what the Imam will present to us is Deen Kitabi, Deen Muhammadi, Deen Nab as it's called, and that deen, that religion will be unrecognizable. And so we have hadiths that drive the youth crazy, that Syed Assad, what's this hadith saying, that this deen is unrecognizable? The hadith says that when the Imam comes, the deen that he'll present will not be recognized by many people. It'll be unrecognizable by his own circles. Meaning what? Is that a new Shiism, a new Islam that he's bringing about? No, not at all. That's the same Islam that has been brought down from the Prophet through Imam Ali, through the Imams onto him. It's us that have taken a little bit of a distance from the actual deen. We've now concocted and created this deen that doesn't exist, such that yes, if the deen that I have in my mind is no way resembling the deen of Imam Zamana, then there's going to be a problem when he comes. There's going to be an immense sacrifice. That's why sometimes, I say this, and, inshallah, I'll move towards Masayib in about 10 minutes, but I say this, this idea that, I think we're in for a little bit of a shock. At least I might be in for a shock when it comes to Imam Zamana's arrival. I'm looking for the bang of the zuhur of the Imam. This unveiling, the curtain lifts and out comes the Imam and ooh and ah. The reality is that we're not waiting for the Imam's arrival. We're preparing for a life under the Imam. And if we understand that what the Imam's government will accomplish is economic equality and economic justice, that means that the ones who are up here, who are privileged, will have to come down here in order to get the underprivileged at par with us. A lot of, people can say that we are extremely privileged. We are extremely privileged, especially during this pandemic. How much support has the Canadian government given us in this support? Right, whether it be in the form of $2,000 a month with CERB or EI or wage subsidy or this and that. Whatever the case may be. Talk about the people of India, Pakistan right now. Right? They literally can't shut down. They cannot not go to work. That one day of work is that same night's dinner. If I don't work, I don't eat. That same day. Meanwhile, mashallah, we have a fridge full of food, a freezer full of food, a pantry full of food. We're being sent iftar in the month of Ramadan, small drop-offs at our doors. And it's great. It's amazing to see. But we are, no doubt, when it comes to the overall 7 billion people, we in the West, I'm sorry to say this, are privileged. Open up our taps, water comes flowing out. Open up our closet, we have an abundant amount of clothes too. To choose from, open up our freezer, unfreeze food and eat it. That means that our lifestyle right now has to be sacrificed to the point where we match the underprivileged to a certain level of justice. Are we ready to sacrifice our own lifestyle and what I've achieved? I don't know. But that's all part of the Deen Khayal and Deen Kitab. And we have to be able to bridge that and match that. So if that means that, so what do I do? Syed Assad, what is the solution? The solution is that if you are truly looking for knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and knowledge from the deen, you have to ensure that deen comes from the right sources. Okay? Ensure that you reach out to the ulama. Ensure that you do your best to read the proper books, right? Cross-reference what you've read. Ask 1,000 questions. But don't end up being individuals who make up their own religion, make up their own thoughts, make up their own knowledge. Right? The knowledge is there for us to gain, for us to benefit from. It's important that we understand that. It's not just something that we have to simply do on our own and, okay, I believe that this is what. No, there's no I believe, right? It's submission to, yes, open for discussion, open for debate, absolutely. But when it comes to somebody who's more knowledgeable than you, knowledgeable than me, I submit to that person, right? I don't do khama ki bahas, as they say in Urdu, right? No reason am I just, it's argument for the sake of argument. There are those people who argue for the sake of arguing. There comes a moment where you say, look, you don't know this, brother, accept it, submit to it, and let's move on. And that's it. And in the like, and in light of the fact that this is Imam Jawad's shahadat, this is the Imam that, for example, the story of Yahya ibn Aktham. Yahya ibn Aktham was a scholar at the time of Imam Jawad's life, and he was the one that was instructed, given that. So go, and teach this child, become his mentor, for example. Very quick story. Become his mentor. Become his mentor, and, attempt to lure him away from what he knows from his father. So here's Yahya ibn Aktham now, a senior scholar, enters the room, a 6-year-old sitting there, thinking, oh, okay, I can sit there and I can mold and I can build and I can kind of change this child as I wish. And after one session, Yahya goes to the Khalifa of the time and says, this is not an ordinary child. He's not my student. I'm actually his student. I haven't taught him anything. He's taught me everything in 1 or 2 sessions. So this is not a child that comes from a normal family. There's some divinity. There's some access to some divine knowledge that you and I don't have at the age of 6, 7 years old. Right? And so, these are things that should motivate our youth, especially our young ones, to work hard, to study hard, to strive hard, to be somebody who is the Ahl Ilm. If that means that you are the top in your class, if that means that you work hard during to get your undergrad, if that means that you're working hard to get your postgraduate, to be somebody who's educated in this day and age, and not someone who's looking for some side business and some quick dollar and some get rich quick scheme, then that's what we have to do to kind of tread the path of Imam Jawad, to uphold the sanctity of knowledge and ilm from the right sources, to be somebody who is a representative of the deen, not somebody who represents the deen of the khayal. I think, I believe, in my opinion. Again, I'm saying there's always room for debate and always room for discussion. Absolutely. What about this? What about that? Sure. But there comes a moment where you submit. If you sit there and, can you imagine now having a discussion with a cardiologist about your heart? Yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but after all, he goes, look, are you the doctor? Am I a doctor? Have you spent X amount of years in med school, or have I? And you'll say, you're right, I'm sorry. Whatever you say, doctor, you're the expert. When it comes to the deen, for example, like I said before, for some reason we're constantly looking like, it's okay, I know you spent this amount of years in the hawza, but I'm going to go this route. Okay, good for you. But then what ends up happening is that we're not truly prepared for life under the imam, not just the arrival of the imam. Because the reality is the amount of sacrifice that has been made for the imam, from the imam, for the deen now to establish itself is extremely important. And we have to understand that sacrifice. What is it that they sacrificed to ensure the deen would be able to survive? And that sacrifice sometimes was their own life. Imam Al-Jawad at the age of 25, can you imagine? When the enemy didn't know what to do with it. He's gaining popularity now. He's destroying all of their warped theories one by one. The only thing they could resort to was to end the man's life. And so this command that was brought down by the Khalifa of the time, Mu'tasam, to poison the Imam was carried out. Imam Jawad was poisoned. And you should know, and I know, that the poison that is used by the enemies of the Ahl Bayt is not normal poison. We go all the way back to the poison that Ibn Muljam used on Imam Ali's sword, struck him with that sword on the morning of the 19th of Ramadan, such that some say within almost an instant, the color of Ali's skin and the blood from the bandage, the yellowness in both got so camouflaged you couldn't tell where the bandage was, where Ali's head was. The poison given to Imam Mustaba, causing him to throw up parts of his liver. All these things were there. You drop a drop of that poison on grass, that grass dies and everything around it. That was the poison given to a very young 25-year-old Imam Jawad for no apparent reason but the fact that the enemy could not bring him down and could not further along their agenda. He was poisoned there, buried in Qadimain beside Imam Qadim alayhi salatu wasalam, and given his all funeral rites. And I would say to you, Imam Jawad, that you, no doubt that poison was very difficult and you were very, 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 very much in pain. But the reality is that you got your burial, you got your funeral, you got your coffin. Come to the lands of Karbala, come to the day of Ashura. There is a fourth Imam, Imam Sajjad, who's looking at his father on the day of Ashura, 20 plus wounds now. His bent is back, his eyes are glazed, the blood of Aliyaska on his face, looking at his Baba. He says, Baba, Aina Qasim, Baba, Aina Abul Fazl Abbas, where is Qasim, where is Abbas, Aina Akhiyun Ali Akbar, where is my brother Ali Akbar? Imam Hussein looks to Imam Sajjad, says, Ya Bunayya, between you and me, there's no other men in the left in his qafilah. It's at that moment now that Imam Sajjad puts one hand on the ground, puts another hand on his father's shoulder, and says to his aunt, Pupi Amma, can you give me my sword and give me my asa, give me my cane? Why, Imam Sajjad? I want to use my sword to defend my father. I want to use my cane to help myself up. He was so bimar, he was so sick. Imam Hussein says, no, my son, this is my Ashura. You have to take these women from Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa to Sham, walk them through the bazaar of Sham, sit there in the courtyard of Yazid and the mosque of Yazid and watch that whole tamasha unfold. That is your journey, Imam Sajjad. This is my journey, my son. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept this qaleel ibadat, inshaAllah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give us that tawfiq to learn from the true sources of knowledge, inshaAllah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to weaken the hands of the enemies of humanity, to strengthen the mustaza'afin all over the world. And finally, Allah, we ask you to allow us to be worthy of the Imam's zuhur when he comes, and to make our families stand beside him when he comes. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.